Introduce this evening's moderator. Arnita Gadsden received a Master of Arts in Business Management and Human Resources from Webster University and a Bachelor of Science in Secondary Education from Kentucky State University. She is currently the Kentucky and Louisville NAACP Environmental Justice Chair and the Executive Director of the West Jefferson County Community Task Force, a 501c3 EJ organization since 2003. He's also retired as the Executive Director of the Kentucky Environmental Quality Commission and the EJ Director at the University of Louisville. Arnita, please take it away.
I am Arnita Gadsden, and I'd like to welcome you to the third webinar in the series of 5 focusing on navigating and getting to know your local, state, and federal environmental agencies. We're using Zoom meeting today, so you will be able to interact with other attendees and presenters during the listening session portion of the webinar. If you have a question, please use the chat button at the bottom center of your navigation bar. You can type your question there at any time. The panelists will answer your questions as soon as possible right there. But there will also be time at the conclusion of the panel discussion for remaining and additional questions left in the chat to be posed to our presenters. As a disclaimer, the views expressed by our non-federal participants are their own and not necessarily those of EPA or the federal government. It is now my pleasure to introduce Harold Mitchell, who will share an overview of his experiences navigating local, state, and federal agencies. Harold Mitchell, Jr. is a member of the Green Advisory Council Board. He founded the Regenerous Project in 1997 in response to a spate of respiratory illnesses in neighborhoods near waste and chemical facilities in his community. Today, the project has successfully leveraged millions of public and private dollars in funds for site cleanups, economic development, affordable housing, and health care for communities affected by environmental racism. Mitchell served as a representative in the South Carolina legislature for 13 years. He received the National Caucus of State Legislators Regional Legislator of the Year Award in 2015. He is a lifelong resident of Spartanburg, South Carolina. Mr. Harold Mitchell, Jr.
Thank you, Arnita. And thank you for this opportunity, because Region 4 seems to be the region that gets it. And navigating local, state, and federal agencies, this workshop is so timely right now with this administration. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone and looking forward to the presenters, panelists for this discussion, because this is not an easy subject. This is a very challenging subject that people don't want to talk about, and that's dealing with state and local agencies. And for quickly getting through a quick overview of how we were able to turn a $20,000 small grant into $300 million with 8 federal agencies, it was basically being able to tell our story. We knew that with the vision and what we wanted in our community was something that, and I'll just tell you quickly in this overview, because it's, to leverage $300 million in 8 federal agencies and being able to deal with local governments where we had to go through administration changes of 4 mayors, 6 city managers, and a complete turnover on council 2 times, that was something that it wasn't easy and we couldn't give up. But it was the biggest thing, I think, when you look at this as far as navigating state, local, and federal agencies. And I think what really got us to see how to do this was being able to sit at the table and understand the process. One of the things was just um, looking when we held our first interagency meeting in 2000, we came back the following month and we saw that the community, the local, state, and federal agencies had all the same goals in mind, but they were just said differently. And there was a lack of trust all the way around. And so this was something with us driving this conversation. We had to tell our story. People were trying to figure out what did we want, and we had to, tell that story, document. We couldn't hang up the phone when someone on the other line didn't answer or didn't express the way we wanted them to. And so it was more so, trying to stay at the forefront. Um, and once understanding the process, looking at local governments, what is part of their master planning and redevelopment planning, when we were able to tie these things together, it made it much easier when we were applying for federal grants as far as being on that same page. We might not have said the same thing, but we all wanted access to healthcare. We wanted better housing. We were concerned about our infrastructure. And these were all the things, and as far as partnering on the same page, made it easier to apply and receive those federal dollars, state dollars, and even with our local foundations. So this workshop is very important, and it's important to hear from those on the ground. And so at this time, I'd like to introduce Omar Muhammad, someone that I've come to know very well here in South Carolina. He's from Augusta, Georgia, where he earned his biology degree from Augusta State University. He currently works for the Department of Natural Resources and the Fisheries as a biologist. Omar has worked as a community advocate and activist since 2007, and as a volunteer for LAMC, the Low Country Alliance for Model Communities, and currently serves as the executive director. Omar completed the EPA's EJ Academy and was selected valedictorian for the inaugural class. Omar is currently pursuing a master's degree in community and urban planning with the policy.
Carl, I think you're on mute.
Oh,
Okay, we can hear you.
okay. Did I introduce Omar?
You did introduce Omar.
Okay, well, I'm sorry for that. Omar, you got me so excited, man, ready to hear you. It just somehow in the system of things just went on mute, sir. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Harold. I appreciate the comments and the introduction. As many of you know, Harold Mitchell's group, not only Harold Mitchell, but the Regenesis organization helped to set the foundation, particularly in South Carolina, on what environmental justice movement looks like for the state. And it is because the work that he has done in the state of South Carolina that our organization also used his example for how we organize our organization. And because of the work that he has been able to do, we have been able to establish in the Low Country similar types of impact in our communities. And this presentation today will highlight some of those achievements, as well as some of the necessary partnerships that we had to establish to be able to achieve some of the improvements to the quality of life of our communities. Next slide, please. So let me begin by just giving you an overview, a very short overview of the LAMC organization. LAMC, the Low Country Alliance for Model Communities, is a grassroots organization that was led by the residents of those communities wanting to improve the quality of life of their surroundings. And as this picture depicts, it shows the communities are colored. So the various colors of the 7 communities that LAMC works in. And as you can see, these communities are surrounded by multiple types of industrial operations. They have a port, they have an intermodal facility, train tracks that bisect and run through their communities. They have a port access road that is at the tip of the community. And then I-26 runs on the perimeter as well of these communities. So our residents are cumulatively impacted by different sources of pollution, not only air pollution, but land pollution and water pollution. When we look at impacts in communities, particularly environmental justice communities. Next slide, please. So like I said before, LAMPC's purpose and our work, particularly our purpose, is to build healthy families by creating pathways to equal opportunities, opportunities for home ownership, economic development, education opportunities, as well as address the legacy environmental justice harms that have been done in communities. So taking these unproductive spaces, polluted spaces in our communities, and transforming them into productive spaces where we have the opportunity to improve the quality of life of our residents. And our work as an organization is intentional and is transformative. And we will not get involved in any work or any partnership that does not lead to those two end results, that the work is intentional and that is transformative for our residents. Like I said before, our focus is 7 communities. Those 7 communities are outlined on the left, and our 4 core areas is outlined on the right. We focus on affordable housing, economic development, education, and environmental justice. Next slide, please. So like all communities, our community struggled at the beginning in the grassroots, right? The community level stage, where we were trying to figure out what was the intent of our organization, how we were going to grow our organization, how do we align with other organizations in the area? We struggled with that, right? We struggled with the fact trying to ground ourselves in the necessary work that was necessary for us to improve the quality of life of our communities and not look like or do the similar work to other organizations, right? And we all struggle with that. We struggle with trying to be something else, right? So we had to ground ourselves and answer several questions, right? What type of impact we want to have in our communities? What was the vision for the future for our communities, and what processes we need to put in place to reach that goal? So these are just some of the questions that we had to resolve, and really wrap our heads and our hands around these different types of questions that many of our organizations, particularly small community-based organizations, struggle with. So we started here, we're still grappling with many of these questions, right? As you grow, you even continue to struggle to answer these questions in a new type of context. Next slide, please. So what helped us to really ground ourselves and really stay focused on the things that was necessary for us to be a productive and effective organization, we were introduced through 2 programs, and I will talk about those programs later. But the LEAP program that was introduced to us from the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control, and partnership with EPA, and also the Environmental Justice Academy. They focused on this model called the Community Problem Solving Model. And actually, this model came out of the work from Regenesis. So Harold Mitchell is really the reason why this model exists, because it is his work, his relationships with the federal government, particularly EPA, where this model was designed. So today, this presentation will focus on elements 2 and elements 4. Next slide, please. So when we talk about community capacity building and leadership development, right? When we are looking to leverage relationships at the local level, state level, or even the federal level, right? Even within our organizations, we have to have conversations around what is our capacity. Not only when we're talking about what is our internal capacity, right? When we are looking to partner, our partners must ask questions of the organizations they are looking to partner with on what are their capacities, right? Because a lot of times we think that we have more skill sets than we do. And a lot of times, sorry about that, that leads to a lot of frustrations when it comes to trying to get achieve the work that we are trying to do. So I mentioned the Environmental Leadership Program, LEAP, that was a partnership between EPA and South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. And that was our very first introduction to capacity building and leadership development within the LAMPC organization. So that really started for us our beginning process to really transform our organization from a community-based led organization to an organization, a more formalized organization, 501c3 status, and other types of capacity building that moved our organization, advanced our organization forward. And then in 2016, we became part of the Environmental Justice Academy, where myself and one of our board members attended this academy, graduated the academy, and this was a pivotal point in our organization. It was after the completion of this academy that we saw a tremendous amount of growth in our organization, being able to apply those lessons that we learned in the academy into the work that we did as an organization. We felt so strongly about the lessons that we were able to apply in our organizations that other organizations in our area should also have the opportunity to learn these modules. So LAMC adopted the Environmental Justice Academy modules, and we have partnered with a local college, Charleston, College of Charleston, and providing this academy free of charge to residents in the Charleston area. Next slide, please. So some of LAMC's key stakeholders and partners, definitely the South Carolina, the University of South Carolina, the University of Maryland, CCRAF, and to the right here, everything did not load on this slide. So to the left, it should also be our regulatory agencies, EPA. Okay, here we go. EPA and South Carolina Department of Environmental Health and Environmental Control. Here they are right there. And our community partners, these are all the community partners that we deal with on a daily basis in the work that we do. So our Metanolia and the Community First Land Trust, which are our partners in our affordable housing efforts. The South Carolina Community Loan Fund, the US CAN, and Moving Forward Network supply funding for some of the work. Coast Community Foundation houses our endowments, and they also provide funding to our organization. South Carolina Ports Authority, Pamela Railways, we mitigated with them, and for a total of $8 million in mitigation dollars that we use to address those 4 core areas that I explained. And you will hear from Dr. Harris later on from Benedict College about a program that we were able to fund some of our students to participate in, and she will go into more detail about that program. Next slide, please. So these are some of the successes that we have been able to achieve through some of the partnerships that we have. For affordable housing, we have been able to create an affordable housing revolving fund where we're able to date acquire 30 pieces of property, and we have built 6 homes and have 5 rental homes that we have been able to purchase and rent at affordable rate for our residents. We are currently right now in negotiations with contracts and identifying general contractor, which is going to be a minority general contractor, working with the city of North Charleston as well as the State Ports Authority on a $4 million contract for the development of a recreation center. So LAMC is heavily involved in that. And then Dr. Harris is going to talk about our partnership with Benedict College, where we funded some of our students to attend their Summer Transportation Institute. And then lastly, citizen science and opportunities to do community training. We're always partnering with our academic partners as well as our regulatory agencies on training opportunities. And Keisha Long from the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control is going to talk about one of the grants that we received with their agency called the EJ Strong opportunity, and that's a training opportunity in our communities. Next slide, please. These are just some examples of how we were able to leverage some of those resources in our communities, where we're able to collect data. right? Collect data that informs local decision-making, collect data, train our residents to collect that data, analyze that data, interpret that data, and then become advocates for the change that they seek in their communities. And this is just one slide that demonstrates the citizen science that we have been able to develop in our community. Next slide, please. And this is just another example of training in our community where we train the residents on a local air monitoring, where because of this initial work, we have been able to create an air monitoring network that involves a state, federal, local, organizations and agencies that are all doing air monitoring in the community. And we collaborate together so that we do not replicate effort, but we collaborate so that we can all understand the monitoring efforts that each organization is doing. Next slide, please. And this is this is a project here where we were able to take use our relationship with the College of Charleston to do a zoning analysis from 1975 to 2000, and I believe it was 19, where we looked at the zoning decisions in the city of North Charleston and looked at the impacts on our communities. And we're able to use the data from this project to be able to inform local zoning decisions and the zoning policies at the city of North Charleston level. I believe this is the last slide there. But I appreciate the opportunity to present to you all today. Thank you.
All right, we don't have audio coming in on that device, Arnita. You may have to use your phone.
Great presentation, Omar. While we're waiting for Arnita, that was a great presentation. Thank you for sharing your experience.
There we are.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Arnita.
Okay, thank you. And thank you so much. Those were great presentations. I think I'm ready to join the group right now, just about now. The next we will have, I will introduce the panelists, and we will have a presentation from each one of those. Our next three presenters, starting with Councilman Michael A. Brown, who is the son of the late Herman Brown and Edith Smalls Brown. He grew up on Union Heights, attended public school of Charleston County, and a graduate of Chicora High School. He attended DeVry Institute of Technology in Atlanta, Georgia, and received a diploma in electronic technology in 1975. Michael was employed by Sears and Roebuck as an electronic repair technician in 2004. He retired from BP Amoco as an instrument and electrical planner after 25 years of service. Councilman Brown has served on the North Charleston County Councilman District 10 from 2007 to present, is a board member of Charleston County Human Services Commission, a member of the Mary Ford Elementary School Improvement Council and Royal Missionary Baptist Church. Councilman Brown is an advisory board member for the Low Country Alliance for Model Communities. Michael is married to the former Evelyn Singleton, and they have two sons, Michael the second, and Tori. I hope I pronounced that correctly. The next presenter is Keisha Long. Ms. Long is the Environmental Justice Coordinator for the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. She is an advocate for vulnerable communities and responsible for helping environmental justice communities build capacity, identify resources, and establish collaborative partnerships. Keisha has been with DHEC for over 20 years. Previously, Keisha worked as a DHEC project manager in the Superfund program and the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act program. Keisha holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering from Clemson University. is an active Toastmaster, and is a co-chair on the advisory board of the Interstate Technology Regulatory Council. Our third speaker is Bariba Harris. She is the Vice President for Enrollment Management at Benedict College. She has held a number of administrative roles at Benedict in the past. Harris holds a bachelor's degree from Benedict, a master's from Columbia College, and a Doctor of Management degree in Organizational Leadership from the University of Phoenix. We will start with Councilman Brown.
Thank you very much, Anita. And I want to say thank you, Omar, and also Harold. The role I'm playing at this moment right now, I got to be rewarded. When I say rewarded or feel as though I am, it's before coming to council, it was Low Country Alliance for Model Communities where I was, and forming those parts and becoming the first director there. It was very exciting and very rewarding. And leaving from there was moving to council, and it's even much more of a challenge because some of the things that you saw and that you wanted to take place, you got a firsthand part of seeing it now from the perspective of the government, and also you had a point of looking at it even much more dealing with as a member of the community. But I found that one of the greatest things or benefit that the city can have is to have great participation from its community or from the citizens of the community. That includes all the neighborhood council that is possible that's in its jurisdiction, but also some of the nonprofits that are there itself. In Omar's presentation, he spoke about the 7 communities that he's comprised of with LAMC. Out of those 7, I have 6 of those are within my district. So I feel happy within that point also, that I have people of LAMC and others that's working for us. One of the greatest common elements that I would think that we're looking for is communication. That is to bring positive growth. This is communication from the citizen that's there that will enhance the city, but not only enhance the city, it enhances the city livability for the constituents in this area. The same point that he spoke on housing, education, health, mine would also, there's another element, is public safety. And the city is looking for those elements to help. When I said help them into making the city better, we got other issues that we start to look at even much more when we start to think about as homelessness. And that is an issue that is fighting our city quite a bit. So I guess through communication and the more participation that we can receive from our constituents, and the better off that'll make the city itself. When we're doing that, we're looking at how can we make these things happen? What are the avenues that we can find this communication, that we can gather these input from our communities? Going through this and finding that there are problems even at the city that I can see that we can do a whole lot better. One of the things that I'm looking at now, some of the elements that we use online service requests that the citizens can voice concerns about, City Boat, which they can use the phone. But there's another part that we do also. We use a lot within our rec departments to get over those parts and start dialogues and conversation. And also within our community meetings, we have someone assigned from the police department, neighborhood resource officer, and also from our code, that is to continue to gather information from our communities and start dialogue. The one element that I find that it's useful, but we can go a little bit even farther, that is when we're speaking about getting information from our constituents or from the folks. We have 57 known community-based organizations within the city. And every first Thursday of the month, they meet with the mayor and voice their concerns through a dialogue. And that way they can get feedback from the mayor and move forward. We also have that avenue on city council for 3 minutes on the second and fourth Thursday that they could address council and also address the mayor. There's one thing that I can see that, looking at it from my perspective, that we can possibly do something quarterly. That is having just a forum where you can invite just the public to come back and ask questions or voice concerns. But that's not there. That's what's saying that in this dialogue and going through this process and seeing what's there, there's ways that we can be better also. But coming out of this, I guess going through the presentation you saw earlier, where we spoke of the city being partners with organization, partner with LAMC. There's many more that we're becoming partners with, which is Metanoia, which is doing a $23 million project within the community that is taking an old school and renovating it. Before we, as the city of North Charleston, has owned the school, which we transfer with the Charleston County School District. So this school would be a point where it comes to after-school entrepreneurs for kids that's there, arts program, those things. We have also our neighborhood resource center, which gives out food to the community. The city has partnered with them. When I speak about partners, it's the point of that, you provide this avenue that how do you make your community better? How do you make the city better? If the city would look to take its point of being involved in all these things without using its outside source, it would be very difficult for it to really function properly. We're going back even from community land trust that was on the chart that Omar spoke of also, which we're giving land to help in the housing itself. So as I look at it, there's quite a bit of things I can think even from year 2010, when we partnered with, it's called a Charleston Promise neighborhood. And they're the same as the is Harlem Children's Zone. That is to help the kids within our communities also, and especially in District 10. So there's a lot that's going on, but one of the key parts that I find out to make a lot of this happen is communication and involvement from the people of the communities, but also the visions from city council and the city of North Charleston to see how can we make our communities better. So I want to go say thank you very much for this opportunity to be a presenter here. Well, thank you for the opportunities that you asked me.
Thank you so much, Councilman Brown. One thing I'd like to ask, all the things that the city has done, it sounds wonderful. Have you seen anything in particular how the community actually reaches out to the city?
Well, when you speak of the community, I think we spoke on just the part that what we're doing right now, where you got a tank farm. The tank farm is a part where it was all tanks that it was used, but we're coming back right now. The city is going to donate the land for them to go ahead and build this rec center. That is one part I can bring out in particular as when I speak about the community and the city on how to reach out. Another part, I guess I spoke of it, but I guess was so much talked about, was even the part of the school that we're doing within Metanoia in doing that $23 million project that'll happen there. I think a lot of our growth itself is, the small parts to come from public safety, coming from community cleanup, those things are normal, but are looking for something that really would add enhancement to our community, that it's not just more of on a one particular basis. Sure, there's things we'd go about. It's just a call I received today on water. Those things, they'll reach out to us within the city, but I was looking at things more on a larger scale that takes place there.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I answered you.
Yes, and I apologize because I don't think I said it right. So I apologize. I was thinking more so when the city has a problem, when the community has a problem, how does the community themselves reach out to get help in the first place?
Yes. There's two systems that I can think of besides, when I speak about that, I'm smiling on your question that you asked. It's an online service that we have. You can use that, and it's also a city box system. But one of the key parts that I've had, and I'm smiling myself because I am that liaison, and I get calls quite a bit. I think I got 2 today on bridging those gaps and making things happen. I guess the point of being there and always having a way to reach out and communicate with the constituents of the communities.
Yes, in other words, I know who to call when I need help.
Please do. Please do.
Thank you so very much. Ms. Keisha Long.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming today. And thank you, Ms. Arnita, for that wonderful introduction. And so we can go to the next slide. Again, I am the Environmental Justice Coordinator here at South Carolina Department of Health Environmental Control, also known as DHEC. And we are one of 3 agencies in the country that are combined health department as well as environmental affairs. My position is in the environmental affairs portion of the agency. I work for Myra Reese. She's the top environmental officer in the state of South Carolina. And here on this slide, you'll see different bullet points. And these are the responsibilities of the Environmental Justice Coordinator. And they include identifying resources for EJ communities, advocating for vulnerable communities, establishing collaborative partnerships, promoting meaningful community engagement, and helping to build capacity in EJ communities. These responsibilities are heavy on collaborative partnerships as well as engagement, working with the community, helping with training, mainly because I'm just one person and I can't do it all. I'm one person that works in this position for the entire state. We do have a senior advisor to EJ, but she works 1 day a week. And she also sits on the National NEJAC committee. So, okay, we have 2 people who work exclusively on EJ, and that's just not enough. And therefore, we are dependent on community leaders, environmental justice leaders, citizens to be aware of environmental justice and aware of environmental justice and also be advocates for their communities. Next slide, please. So some of the activities that I've seen that are successful with community organizations and how to start and maintain relationships. The first step really is to start on just one project, and it doesn't have to be a big project. It could be something small. It could be a relationship such as I said before, we're combined health agency as well as environmental affairs. I have been working a lot for the last 16 months on COVID response. I have connected with several people in the community related to that. We are fortunate enough to have a supply of masks that we are able to distribute exclusively for EJ communities. And so that's how our relationship can start from that one point, and then it can grow and blossom to something more comprehensive, such as the EJ Strong project that Omar discussed earlier. Some other activities, we have something called the EJ Hub, which is a collaboration of EJ leaders throughout the state, as well as people with nonprofits and some state organizations. It first started with the Clean Power Plan, which was being considered during the Obama administration, but it continued into a collaborative partnership with DHEC to help share resources to discuss different projects each community is working on. getting ideas on how to, say, get grants or advance different projects, long-term projects, short-term projects. And next slide, please. These are some of the projects we've done on the last 10 or 12 years. The LEAP, Leaders in Environmental Action Pilots, was a EPA-funded grant that, and Omar spoke on this briefly earlier. It were four pilots. 4 communities received a $25,000 grant to work on various projects. LAMP-C, CDIC out of Graniteville. There's a Place for Hope in Rock Hill. And the 4th was the Monty Group in Aiken. And each continues to this day to work with DHEC on various projects. And that's also as part of this particular program, the Allen University Environmental Justice Institute was created, which again, Omar mentioned earlier, and he said it was instrumental in helping advance the community in terms of capacity building and leadership skills. Again, COVID-19 response, we have transitioned from COVID-19 testing to COVID-19 vaccination clinics. We have been setting up many clinics in the communities, particularly in rural communities that have in the beginning were not really getting the big mega sites like you would see in Columbia, Greenville, Charleston. Many of these particular clinics are hosted at community centers or churches. Schools have been a lot of locations we've been working with recently and have been getting a lot of participation. Parents are bringing their children in to be vaccinated before school year starts. Right now, South Carolina, we are not mandating mask wearing and we're not mandating vaccinations. And then the EJ Strong project is the project we're working on currently. It's a community managed disaster risk reduction program that started in the Philippines. This is the first time it has been offered in the United States. But basically, we're working with community leaders to prepare for a disaster. How do you react and work during the disaster, and how do you revitalize after a disaster to get back to normal or preferably better than normal? And that is all I have in terms of slides. This is my contact information, my mailing address, as well as my phone numbers and email. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Arnita, you're muted.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
We got you.
Okay, that was my big finger that hit that. One thing, that you were talking about, that if you could just elaborate a little bit on, is the community's relationship with the state agency. And like, when we start, I know many times in some of the things I do, you start a relationship, but it doesn't last. It doesn't last for a long time. So how do you kind of keep the relationship with the community organization with the state agency? Or is that a problem? They may be a problem. And if it isn't, just say it's no problem.
Well, this definitely depends on really the interest of the leader. I try to stay engaged with everyone. Usually I send out a lot of emails on grant opportunities, on requests for comments on different environmental justice policies that are coming out of Washington, D.C., and also opportunities that have nothing to do really with environmental issues, health issues, employment, housing. Everything is really connected to environmental justice. I have found, this is my 3rd year as environmental criminal justice coordinator. So EJ does not exist in a vacuum. And if there's a issue with, let's say, a Superfund site that is located in a particular community, oftentimes there are other issues such as poor roads or water that's not potable, or housing that is poor or old and it needs in need of repair. So I try to reach out consistently via email. We do hold quarterly meetings with our EJ Hub. And so it's not a one and done when you do a project. Once you get on my list, you stay on my list unless you send me an email and say, stop sending me things. I got very few of those. So that's how I try to stay continuously engaged with everyone.
All right. Thank you. So thank you so very much. The work you do is tremendous. So with that, let's go to, and why do I not have her name here? Dr. Harris? Yes, Dr. Harris.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gatson. It has definitely been a treat listening to the presentations and seeing so many of our leaders talk about their commitment to the community. And Benedict College, in our 152 years of being in the community, is definitely pleased to have a mark in this conversation about how we are able to facilitate and navigate relationships with some of the state, federal, and local partners that we have partnered with over the past 19 years. In particular, I will highlight one of our partnerships, just kind of to speak to Ms. Gatson's point about the longevity of maintaining relationships. And I'll talk a little bit about one of the cycles that we've gone through with one of our partners, in particular, highlighting the Summer Transportation Institute and our relationship with the South Carolina Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, based on some of our work with LAMC. So in 2000, and yes, ma'am, go Benedict College, go Tigers, share our distinguished alum that also plays a role even in our work with the Department of Transportation. So I'll talk about alumni roles in that work as well. So in about 1998, South Carolina State University started the Summer Transportation Institute with the Federal Highway Administration and the South Carolina Department of Transportation to expose young people in our communities to career opportunities and educational opportunities in transportation. As the relationship developed at Benedict College, Dr. Robert Scott was the team leader for Benedict College, working with Dr. Clarence Hill. South Carolina State piloted the program that then became a national program that was funded by Federal Highway Administration and South Carolina Department of Transportation. Benedict College's participation in the program again started with Dr. Scott. When Dr. Scott decided he was going to retire, he was very intentional and deliberate to train me on what needed to be done to maintain our successful engagement with the National Summer Transportation Institute. Mr. Rufus Watts, who was our director for scholarships at the time at Benedict College, was over the Dwight David Eisenhower Fellowship Program that engaged Benedict College students in research opportunities in the transportation industry. Dr. Eileen Payne helped write some of and promote some of the legislation from Federal Highway Administration into the law, working with Congressman Clyburn to make the Dwight David Eisenhower Fellowship Program available to not just students at PWIs or predominantly white institutions, but also HBCUs, and made sure that language was included in the legislation so that we would have an opportunity to compete for federal dollars to implement the Summer Transportation Institute, the Dwight David Eisenhower program, and participate in some of the other internship programs like STIP-D. As I stated, our alumni base is very strong and engaged. Mrs. Pamela Foster, who is a civil rights officer with Federal Highway Administration and a Benedict College graduate, was very deliberate in also making sure I was trained very early on in my engagement with the National Summer Transportation Institute and the Dwight David Eisenhower Fellowship Program. I'd also like to highlight Ms. Barbara Beagles from South Carolina Department of Transportation. I was very young in my career when I assumed the responsibilities to work with the transportation industry in the National Summer Transportation Institute and the Dwight David Eisenhower Fellowship Program. Two things that they said to me: Veriva, we will help you be successful because the students that we're trying to reach need these programs. So I've learned very early, although I was getting the help to be successful, it wasn't about me. It was about the purpose, and it was about the students who needed the help and who they wanted to help. So at Benedict, we recruit top students to matriculate and graduate to earn college degrees. SCDOT wanted to harness top talent in South Carolina in our public high schools, private high schools, charter schools, faith-based schools, rising 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, to put them in a summer program to expose them to career opportunities in transportation. We worked with partners like Boeing, Honda of South Carolina, the Ports Authority, Federal Highway Administration, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, South Carolina Department of Transportation, to provide students with a broad range perspective of career opportunities in transportation. We also partnered with the University of South Carolina when they were really promoting fuel cell research. We had students placed there in internship opportunities from all of the HBCUs. One of the federal and state grants was the summer internship program in transportation, where we worked with all of the HBCUs in South Carolina to identify 1 to 2 students who had an interest in transportation. And we placed them in internship opportunities in academia, nonprofits, corporate and state agencies, so that they can get hands-on real-world experience. In addition to that, when the Ports Authority project came up and they were expanding the port in Charleston, our work expanded to concentrate from a statewide effort in recruiting students to a localized effort that to the Charleston area where Lansing sits and is one of the lead community agencies. We knew, although we had been educating students from Charleston, South Carolina for over 140 years, that we could not go into that community and not work with Lansing and think we were going to be successful. So part of our strategy when we're going and working with agencies and organizations is knowing who's successful in that community that's already doing some of the work that we want to help expand or deepen the reach. And so in our partnership with LAMC, we learned very early when we came in the first year, we only had maybe 1 or 2 students on a 3-year contract. Well, when we started working with LAMC a lot closer, then they began to introduce us to their partners in Metanoa, who then opened up the floodgates, and we had more than enough students in our second year to continue with the program. And instead of having 2 or 3 students in the first year, by the 3rd year, we were able to serve all 30 of the high school students, high school and college students the program charged us with serving. So although we have federal partners in Federal Highway Administration, state partners in the South Carolina Department of Transportation, and we are an academic institution that recruits throughout the state. In that particular program, we realized we could not be successful in implementing the objectives of that program in reaching the students in the Charleston area without working with one of the lead agencies in that area that already had a pulse on the young people in that community. And so that was the work that we partnered with Omar that helped us be very successful. As COVID-19 hit, we learned that, well, right before COVID-19 hit, we learned that partnerships don't always come with pocketbooks and checks, even though they are sweeter partnerships when they come with pocketbooks and checks. When you have strong relationships, you realize some of the cycles that your agency partners go through. Sometimes the federal money just won't drop down so that the state can get it, so that it can get to the partners in the local community. And instead of getting mad, poking out our lips, going and find another partner, we stuck in there with Federal Highway and SCDOT. And they engaged some of the successes that we had by inviting us to participate in conferences to talk about the success stories that we had in administering various programs. So when there was no money, there were still opportunities to brag about what we had done in the past so that we could stay on the radar, that when the money opened back up, we would be in the front of the line to get it again. So we learned that in the cycles of those relationships, when you're able to deliver what you say you can deliver and what your partners expect you to be able to deliver, even when the money runs out, the faucet will come back on again. And as long as you're still delivering, you can stay in the pipeline to help the agencies meet the goals and objectives that they have. One of the other benefits, Dr. Artis, our president, always talks about reflecting on the past and learning from it and staying focused on the future. And as we continue to focus on the future, when COVID-19 happened, our programs before COVID were residential programs where students would come to Benedict College and stay on our campus for 4 weeks out of the summer and go home on the weekends. And we take field trips to all of the transportation agencies to see highway construction projects being built, to observe how airplanes are being made at Bowen, to see how ATVs were being made, to take trips on the Comet, on the transit systems, and to even visit the ports to see how the intermodal transportation systems were working. We even visited Clemson University to learn about autonomous vehicles for our students. When COVID happened, the challenge was, how are we going to be able to rise to the occasion and offer such a hands-on program in a virtual environment? Because we were able to convince our partners in Federal Highway and SCDOT that we could deliver on that, because we stood up and transitioned from a full face-to-face in-person classroom instruction, that we could deliver a virtual program to continue to engage young people in transportation and college and career readiness. We were able to serve 22 students in this year's virtual program and successfully meet all of the objectives of the Summer Transportation Institute. In my closing remarks, I'd just like to highlight two of the strongest tools that we've had that kept our partnership alive from 2002 up until now is a formalized signed partnership agreement with Federal Highway Administration, South Carolina Department of Transportation, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and the South Carolina Department of Public Safety. That agreement, I'll just give some highlights. It has a purpose, why we came together in honor of one of the executive orders that encourage these agencies to work with historical Black colleges and universities, and to accomplish not only workforce development goals for them, but how to co-create and partner with our academic curriculum so that our students would leave Benedict College with hands-on experience, ready to walk into one of these organizations, transportation organizations, and be not only workers, but to be thought leaders to help solve challenging problems of the 21st century. And so in addition to our outreach efforts, we focused on research, and we also focused on making sure that our partnership agreement had an evaluation component based on what we designated roles and responsibilities would be for each of the agencies. And every 2 years, the agencies come together to evaluate how we're reaching the goals and objectives of our programs. So in addition to working with our state agencies, we've been able to expand our relationship with Clemson University, who heavily recruits our students for their master's programs in transportation, computer engineering, computer science, in their Center for Mobility, Center for Multi-Mobility. They work a lot with autonomous vehicles. And so not only are they a university transportation center, they partner with Benedict College with our faculty to do research, and with our Summer Transportation Institute to help with their outreach into the community, because they have a true focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion in the transportation industry. And in addition to them being partner leaders, when it comes to outreach, they look for us to be the leaders in that role. So looking to them for a lot of the technology and research, and they look to us for a lot of the outreach. And so through those full circle partnerships with Federal Highway and SCDOT and local agencies and some of the other larger colleges and universities, we just learned very early, we're good at what we're good at. What we're not good at, we partner with somebody who's good at it. And we've learned that if we stay in our lanes and provide the levels of expertise that we're able to deliver, then we find that we have very successful partnerships with our state agencies, federal agencies, and local agencies. Those concludes my remarks, unless there are other questions.
Thank you so much. That is such a great program there. I think you've answered just about any question that I would have. Do you think that we could model this in other communities? Do you think there is an opportunity for us to do it? And then if you can kind of give me how you think we could, that would even be better.
Sure, I do. I think our program is the model that we use is replicatable and scalable. If you have people with a heart to serve the people and to be able to operate from a place of truth, like for example, if we're not getting money to support the programs that we're doing, there's a reason we're not getting money, because a series of decisions have been made to give money to somebody else. It's not a secret, you know, it's a strategic decision that was made. And if there's an opportunity to partner and people want to truly partner, a series of decisions have to be made to be committed to that partnership. And so if you have an academic institution that is naturally good at certain things, like Benedict is phenomenal at outreach. We are great at that. We're great at research in science, technology, engineering, and math. We may be good at it on a small scale, but if you partner with a federal agency like the Department of Transportation, they're one of like the second largest contracting agency in the federal government. So they have money, so we can scale what we're doing if they provide the resources because they have similar interests. And then we can mega scale what we're doing if we're able to partner with an organization like Clemson University or University of South Carolina who have similar interests. And so I certainly think all the way down to the local partners, the model that we use is replicatable.
Yes, I think so. I think there are probably a lot of people, if they knew about what was going on, would love to have the opportunity to try to replicate it, because it is a great thing. Just one question out of my own curiosity: the ninth grade students I saw mentioned in the STEM program, how many do you actually have when it comes to the high schoolers?
So every year, so some years they will fund up to 15 students. Other years it's been 30 students, and this past year it was 22 students. So when we're recruiting rising 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, it's usually, if it's a program, it's usually about 40% 9th graders, and then 60%, 30% 10th graders, and 30% 11th graders. But usually it's very easy to recruit 9th graders for programs because their parents are still very involved in what they're doing and want to see them occupied and engaged. The older they get, to be able to make decisions about how they're going to use their time, in particular in the summer. So that's why we do our programs from 9th through 11th graders, because the parents still have some involvement with the 9th graders, and we know we're going to have a solid group of 9th graders. So anywhere, but like it's about 40%, anywhere between 10, if we have a group of 10, we're going to have 4 to 5 9th graders. If it's 30, we're going to have 10 to 15 9th graders.
All right, that is great. That is great. I used to teach those 9th graders, and they can be a little difficult from time to time, but that is great. That is absolutely great. I want to thank our panelists and for your presentations, and we're going to open the floor now for questions and answers. We thank you for the questions. If you have any in the chat box, for those that have not already been answered, Cheryl Good will read those out to the panelists at this time. So please feel free to add your questions to for the panelists as we go. So with that, Cheryl, you will take the first questions if we have any.
Well, we do not have any questions in the chat box at this moment, Anita. So I think we're going to move right into our listening session portion of the webinar.
Okay. Evidently the speakers were just perfect.
I think so.
There's one question in the chat box.
Okay, I didn't see it. Okay. Let's see, did it just pop up?
Yes, I sent to you directly. It was sent to me.
Okay, so how is DHEC working with Region 4 EPA to help EJ communities navigate the sometimes cumbersome, cumbersome process of obtaining federal EJ grants to help vulnerable communities combat climate change impacts such as rising sea levels? So how is DHEC working with Region 4 EPA to help EJ communities navigate the sometimes cumbersome process of obtaining federal EJ grants to help vulnerable communities combat climate change impacts such as rising sea levels?
All right, thank you for that question. We do engage a lot with the Region 4 EJ staff, Brian Holtzclaw, Cheryl Good, Tammy. We do have regular meetings and also phone calls. I know that the grant process is cumbersome. The EJ Strong grant that we put in last year ended up being 50 pages worth of documentation, letters of support, budgets, and it can get unwieldy. I encourage you to reach out to myself or Karen if you're interested in applying for EJ grant, and we'll do our best to help you navigate the process. There are also other resources that are available. There's the, I think it's Kansas State that offers, they help you with the grant process. They have regular webinars about grants. They also will look at your application and give you tips and comments. So you're not alone. We want people to apply for the grants. We want the grant application to be successful. It is a big time commitment and a disappointment if you don't receive a grant. So Yes, we do work with EPA. We work with other organizations for EJ communities to help get grants as well as offer letters of support and other help.
All right, Keisha, I have another question for you. It's how long have you had an environmental justice component at DHEC?
We started really with, there was Nancy Whittle, and her background was social work. And she really was the linchpin for us to not only advocate for environmental justice communities, but also for community engagement and active public participation. And she retired several years ago, but her mentee was Karen Sprayberry, who is still with the agency. She works part-time. And Karen and I worked together when she was in the Superfund Brownfields program in the early 2000s. So Karen Sprayberry, as well as Myra Reese, carried the mantle of environmental justice. I would say formally 2007 is where we had a designation from the state legislature on EJ, doing the EJ hub, starting that process. And then I came in three years ago as the environmental justice coordinator. I am the second person in that position. Michael Bailey was the first environmental justice coordinator, and I believe he started at DHEC in that position in 2018-ish. So EJ has been in top of mind at DHEC, environmental affairs, for many years, but it was formalized recently in the last few years.
Thank you, Keisha. I do not see any more questions right now for our panelists. I think that's it. So I think we can move on to the listening session, Michelle.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, Michelle. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, the questions are all for you. Well, it's all for you, Keisha. How does DHEC balance redevelopment projects in EJ community concerns?
Say that one more time. You cut out just a little bit.
How does DHEC balance redevelopment projects in EJ communities with gentrification concerns?
Right. That has been something that top of my mind whenever there is revitalization. That's always my next question is, okay, the area has been improved, cleaned up, it's looking cute, and it's fairly cheap at the moment. So people from outside move in, and people who've been there long-term get pushed out due to rising prices. And Lampsey, I believe, has a good model for how to push back on gentrification. I don't know if Omar highlighted their program, but with DHEC and balancing gentrification, we really depend on the local community to be engaged on that issue. We are bound by our regulatory authority and what we can and can't do. We do advocate for vulnerable communities. We do make sure that different companies adhere to the law, but we do have some limits. So it's definitely important for the community to be engaged in redevelopment. Also, zoning is a critical part of being engaged in the community. I know in Columbia, a lot of our rezoning decisions were made many years ago. And apparently there's no time limit on designation to say a apartment complex going into one of our Lower Richland communities actually was approved in the 1980s and it's just now being built. And so obviously it's too late to try to backtrack and change things. So I definitely encourage everyone to be engaged with the zoning board at the very least.
All right, Cheryl, I think we're ready to go into the breakout rooms, but I just wanted to note that we've had such great experiences shared from our panelists and presenters. If you do have additional questions for them, feel free to put those in the chat box and we'll get those questions to our panelists today. So thank you so much. But now we want to hear from all of you all as well. So we are going to break out into some breakout rooms. But just to give you an idea of what we're hoping to hear, EPA and the workshop series planning teams have compiled a resource guide with a collection of tips to successfully work with your local, state, and federal government agencies. We will add your tips and the suggestions that we collect during this listening session to that guide, and then that will be made available on the workshop series website in the near future. I'll drop that email address in that you can also send those to in the chat here right now. Do that on the fly. That email you can use at any time that you have some ideas, suggestions, tips on successful navigation of government agencies. We really think that crowdsourcing is the best way to provide those resources amongst us. So we have some logistics here. We've assigned all attendees randomly to breakout rooms. So this should be a very simple process for all. When the rooms are launched, you will be sent directly to one of these breakout sessions where there will be a facilitator to guide the group and a scribe to help capture the discussion and then report out on that when we reconvene here in the shared Zoom space that we're in now in 10 minutes. All of the rooms will be using the same set of discussion prompts. We're hoping that these questions will provide a framework for all of our attendees to share their experiences and let us know generally for community groups what has been your biggest accomplishment working with your respective government agencies to resolve your environmental concerns. And then from our government agency attendees, what positive experiences have you had working with communities and community-based organizations? So our scribes will be capturing the lessons learned and the discussion from our question prompts, so that when we come back together and share that discussion, we'll all benefit from each other's successes and best practices. If you are not sent directly to a breakout room, just stay put right here in the main room, and one of our hosts will be able to manually put you in a breakout, so you'll be able to join the conversation as well. So with that, Andrea, please launch our breakout rooms.
Michelle, are we still taking 20 minutes?
We're taking 10, Allison.
10, thank you.
All right. Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. I hope everyone had some great conversation. We were having a good time in our room. And so now we get to hear back from everyone and hopefully, you know, learn some lessons from your conversations too. So for our scribes, for each of the breakout rooms, you were assigned an initial question to start that conversation. So I'll call on each of you now and go through those questions to report back the highlights from your group's conversation. As time allows, we'll follow that with an opportunity to highlight other points from your conversations too, so keep those at hand as well. So all of these notes, by the way, just as a reminder, are going to be compiled and will provide that additional content for the resource guide that is being compiled to be shared out later on this series website. We'll add that series website back in the chat again so everybody can make a note of that and bookmark it. So with that, I'm going to start with the scribe for breakout room 1 to share your notes on the group's discussion of the following question. And by the way, breakout room 5, you'll be up next because you had the same starting question. So breakout room 1, do you or the group you represent have any success stories in identifying, reaching out to, and then building relationships with pertinent government agencies or individuals that you'd like to share?
Yes, so we had a number of participants share their success stories. One of our participants had success. They had conversation that was facilitated by the EPA in order for them to engage with a utility company. And the participant said there was some success, but hopes that there's more conversation in the future. We had another participant who worked on a grant to understand the community concerns even deeper, and they looked at specific data about stormwater in order to learn more about this. And they reached out to municipal entities and then brought them in to talk, and they're still talking actually. So that was a pretty good success. Another participant had a very engaged community already, and they began an air monitoring task force that began a program that monitored the air more stringently so that they could be sure that there was plenty of data and plenty of monitoring of the air in the local community. And then we had another registrant or another participant, sorry, who works a lot with the local utility district, and they have a local EPA partnership with the water. And they continue this relationship because it was successful, and they regard it as important to have advocates within the community.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Parker. Breakout room 5, same question.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. And those are awesome stories. That's cool to hear about. We focused more on kind of the identifying and reaching out to piece of that question. So we talked about how it's important to just get started. So you might not know the exact perfect person to reach out to at an agency, but there were a few of us from government agencies in the room, and we talked about how we have a very customer service focused mentality. And so chances are, if you contact someone, they should be able to find the right person and kind of get you in touch with that individual. We mentioned looking at org charts and kind of focusing on websites. You can see who might be in the general area that you're interested in. And also kind of having those people that you lean on. So if there's someone that you've been in touch with at an agency who's been helpful in the past, you can go back to them, and we all kind of have our own networks. And so hopefully, even if it's not the right person immediately, you should be able to get in touch with the right person relatively quickly. So I think the theme was just get started and don't be afraid to reach out, since we're here to help you.
Michelle, you're muted.
Thank you. That's first time in the evening, so hey, that's a win, right? So next up, we have breakout room 2, which will be followed by breakout room 6. So breakout room 2 first. Please share your notes from discussion of the following question. What have been the most successful approaches to identifying and contacting individuals within government agencies with whom you collaborate?
So our group was actually all government officials. And so we kind of had that perspective when we discussed this question. And one of them is kind of, we just discussed the value of showing up to sessions like this, having sessions like this that is an opportunity to listen. We talked a lot about the value of community involvement coordinators who can really take that technical info from the engineers and the scientists and make sure that it's understandable for everyone in the community. And to, while the scientists and engineers are talking, you know, that this person can, you know, look at the facial expressions of people and make sure that they're actually understanding in a meeting. And then we just really talked about the opportunity to, the most successful approach is to have people tell their story from their perspective. And even if it's not directly related to, you know, what you called a meeting for, what the project at hand is, it's all related and all interconnected. And so really just taking the time to understand these issues as a whole, and really, really listening to them. And then also another successful strategy we talked about is just building the capacity for the community groups, including the funding and paying participants for their time and effort in these strategies. So, and compensating them as you would a researcher.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Julie. So breakout room 6, same question to you.
Hi, yes. So the people in that was in group 6 actually were government agent workers. So yeah, there wasn't really any answers for that question.
Do you have any other?
Is that our room, Javion?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we don't really have a good response for that one because like she said, yeah.
Well, Javion, keep your ears open, and at the end, we'll come back and you can share one of the great insights that your room did come up with then in a different question maybe. So thank you. We have great representation from government agencies tonight.
Apparently in the settings, when we launched this meeting, there was a setting enabled that attendees would not be allowed to chat, only to hosts and co-hosts. If you have a question, you can certainly raise your hand and we'll call on you.
Excellent. Thank you, Troy. Everyone, please, you want to check back on the recording for this and for that resource guide. Refer back to the email that you received for this workshop, and I believe that website should be there as well. We were hoping to put that back in the chat again. All right, so next up, we're going to go straight to breakout room 4. We didn't have a 3 this time. So breakout room 4, have you found helpful communication strategies to maintain your network? Those that you've met and those that you've worked with.
Yeah, some of the takeaways we got from our group with Faith, Benita, and Ray were, and there was a little mix in there, was that, you know, don't give up trying to tell your story. I told of one story of several communities driving all the way to Atlanta, 2 or 3 hours just to get in front of management and repeat telling their story and repeat what they think EPA hasn't been doing or was doing right. And they did that religiously every 3 months. There was another, I thought, best practice. One of us stated about a state agency that has an open door day. They let communities come in and they listen. Also, it was talked about that one of the state environmental agencies, North Carolina, they have an EJ and equity board that gets online every 2 months. And there's always a public participation session where the public can ask questions and make their voice heard to big shots per se in the state agency. And then Ray was talking, there's what they call a MEJAC. Those are the initials for Mobile, Alabama EJ Coalition. They have calls monthly. The citizens can talk and share about their concerns and organize better, so when they meet with government officials, they can articulate. And there's a lot of other great ideas. One of the bottom lines is remind government that every community is truly different. They have different needs. They must be gotten to know individually, their cultural relations, their key players, their gatekeepers, and it's important that government officials know that communities are unique and they need to know that and relate to them in that respect. So that's just a few.
Great conversation. Thanks, Brian. Definitely some good lessons learned in there for our resource guide.
One other one I forgot. Faith brought up the importance of showing up for town halls. Don't be shy about, you know, going in front of these big meetings. You've got to tell your story and get your voice heard. So that's it. Thanks.
Good ad. Good ad. All right. So our last breakout room and our last question was breakout room 7. And Charlotte was our scribe, and she's going to share our thoughts around what could be improved upon to help government agencies and community members form and maintain effective relationships. Are there specific resources, tools, or actions that come to mind?
We had a lot of conversation around this. So I'm just going to briefly read off what people said. So, and some of these are applicable just for communities and some of these are applicable for government agencies. So one of the things that stood out for communities can learn how to be more patient and not give up. Because sometimes we found that when we're really passionate about our community, or passionate about trying to talk about a situation or a challenge, sometimes we can alienate the same people that we're trying to enroll in helping us. So we said that communities can learn to be more patient and not give up. They can celebrate small wins, look for win-wins. And this is applicable to the regulatory agencies and communities. You want to look for win-wins and seek out compromise using appreciative inquiry, which is something, again, Omar brought up that he learned in the Environmental Justice Academy. He said that appreciative inquiry, that tool is applicable for government. For government personnel, regulatory agencies, communities, and industry. Another thing someone said, I think Arnita said, was change your language by removing always, never, everybody, and nobody. Because when you use those particular words, you're more than likely going to be wrong. You can't just generalize and lump all communities together or all situations together. So think about how to change your language and eliminate always, never, everybody, and nobody. And then one of the strategies that Omar said when we were, one of the tools that he used was in the beginning when you're trying to keep your community, when you're trying to build a relationship within your community, to use carrots, use gift cards, small awards, lots of attaboys. You want to use carrots. And then once you once you show value, then community participants will be already engaged. And then the last thing, use data to know what you're talking about to establish credibility. And that, again, that's really for the community. So we had a lot of discussion about like what community people can do better to maintain your relationships. And there are a couple of other things, creating boards to be responsible for certain items like community engagement. And just always keep in mind that the end goal is to empower the community so that they can be an advocate for themselves. That's it.
Awesome. That was a great recap, Charlotte. Just quickly, does anybody have any other findings, tips, suggestions that didn't come out in the leading questions that you want to share real quick? This is an open mic there. If not, I'm going to turn us back over to Arnita. Thank you so much to our facilitators and to our scribes.
Well, I think that we have definitely been educated tonight. I know I have enjoyed this, even though I'm sitting here with my phone in my hand and I have exercised it thoroughly. And but that's okay, because I think that that's the way it was supposed to be. So with that, we thank you again for attending tonight's webinar and look forward to you attending the last two webinars in September and November. Please visit the website next week. A list of resources, the presenters' biographies and presentations, and the link to the webinar recording. I would like to take a moment to thank this wonderful planning team. They have spent many hours organizing this webinar. Please give a virtual round of applause to the planning team. Everybody can do their applause. There you go. Jennifer Tribble, Michelle King, Charlotte Clark, Parker Henry, Ronnie Atkins, Omar Muhammad. And I'm sure somebody else did something, we just forgot them. But at any rate, please complete the survey to help us improve on future webinars. You should receive the link at the conclusion of the webinar. Enjoy the rest of the evening and thank you for attending.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Great job.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate everyone's time tonight. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Great job, Arnita.
Thank you. Thank you for
and all of our presenters. Thank you, Michael, Omar, Harold, Keisha, and Bariva. Thank you all.
And thank
And
you to our
Michelle,
tech
and
team
Michelle.
behind the scenes that kept us
Yes,
all
yes.
rolling. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you, Troy and Andrea and Bryant.